found in our research was that liberals and conservatives, when they go to make political arguments to one another, they make arguments in terms of these values that they endorse at higher levels than their political counterparts, even when they know that they're supposed to be trying to persuade, across the aisle. We still find that liberals, when we ask them to make arguments for why same-sex marriage should be legal, tended to make arguments in terms of equality and fairness, which are more liberal values. And at a very low rate did they make an argument in terms of a conservative value. And when we had conservatives make arguments to liberals on a classically conservative issue like making English the official language of the U.S., they tended to make arguments in terms of respect for authority and patriotism and group loyalty to the nation, and very rarely used the values of the people that they were supposed to be trying to persuade.
It's funny you said, because when it comes to gay marriage, if I'm talking in favor of gay marriage to a conservative, what I'll say to them a lot of times, and I've gotten some headways, I don't say to them, because I'm preaching to the choir if I'm talking to a liberal, but for a conservative, if I hit a conservative with the idea that, well, gay marriage is a human right, gay rights are human rights, like Jesus Christ. But when I say to a conservative, I say, do you really think the state should be involved in the marriage business? That a government bureaucrat should tell you what to do in your bedroom? And then I get a very favorable. It's pretty cool because it's a good way to get.
But this is also, you can have that. I mean, so this.
The point is, I'm a very smart arguer. I know how to frame arguments way before
I didn't just ask you.
Yeah, way before Willer came along.
But even to make you even smarter, Bryan, this is the better you understand your own elephant, the better you'll be able to manipulate other people's elephants to do what you want.
Keep in mind that when I say that liberals have these values more, I should say that they endorse them at higher levels than conservatives, and they're more frequently invoking them in their political reasoning, and vice versa for these more conservative moral values. But that doesn't mean that, conservatives don't sometimes have, strong harm-based moral convictions around, for example, abortion. But of course, conservatives' views about abortion also have a lot to do with purity, sanctity, and feelings of disgust around aborted fetuses. When conservatives go to agitate on liberal college campuses, they'll bring out disgusting photographs of aborted fetuses. That's a kind of moral intuition that liberals are less likely to have. So it's kind of a classic example of what I'm talking about how liberals and conservatives talk past each other.
I think your work is so important right now anyway, just learning how to reframe things, because I think, and I may be wrong about this, but it does feel like we are living in a very polarized time, politically. It feels like the both sides of the aisle are not speaking to each other at all. You've got the Tea Party, you've got these freshman senators, congressmen saying essentially they're signing a contract that no matter what they'll never raise taxes. You got ideology on both sides. It seems like nobody's talking to each other.
It's a very frustrating situation. By the way, I should try to square the circle by offering an example of how we did this moral reframing. So just as an example of how one could approach moral persuasion differently, we ran a study where we tried to make a political message for same-sex marriage that would resonate more with conservative values. So we made a pro-same-sex marriage argument in terms of the values of patriotism and loyalty and compared its effectiveness with conservatives to a more conventional message in terms of equality and fairness. And so the patriotism message made arguments like gay Americans are proud, patriotic Americans. They serve in the military. They contribute to our economy. They deserve the same rights as all other Americans, and America, and go America. And a message like that was designed to, be very patriotic and resonate with conservatives' values around group loyalty, which I think are, quite reasonable and often very honorable values. It was significantly more persuasive to conservatives than that conventional message, which we don't think moves people at all. Liberals, it didn't really matter what they read. They're already on board for same-sex marriage, as you already noted, Bryan. And so we've tested this with a whole bunch of different issues and find pretty consistent evidence that, this isn't like a silver bullet where you're going to start flipping people on, issues like Obamacare, easily.
Well, you may not be, but Bryan will be.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be changing hearts and minds all across this great land of ours.
You're right. But at least it may create a civil, it may create civil discourse where there isn't even that at this point.
Well, yeah, we would love for that to be the case. To even do this technique, you really have to get into the heads of your political counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my colleague Matt Feinberg and I, that we did this research, when we would write these essays, we would have this experience of thinking through, I mean, I'll just come out and say we're political liberals, and we, it's the first time in our lives that we think set of conservatives who had different moral and political commitments from ourselves, and think, why would they ever agree with us on this issue, given the things that they hold most dear?
Right.
Like how could I get them to see how my idea on this political position is not crazy and is maybe even reasonable without having to move them at all on their most deeply held, beliefs. Things that you're willing to go out in the world and maybe fight and die for. Because if I try to move them on that too, that's a non-starter most likely. And that exercise of having to think through somebody else's perspective that deeply was, I think, really good for both of us.
Well, talk a little bit about that, because I think you can define a man.